And this is the way I do my trip. So you're going to start it right here. I always start at the top left, and work my way down to the right, just like in the book. So, very first, you have to point to and touch everything you talk about on the pre-trip. If you don't point to, like if I don't point to the lights, and I just stand here like this and say clearance lights, you're not going to get close to that on the DMV test. So you have to point to or touch everything. So the first thing I'm going to do is point to the clearance lights, and I'm going to say the clearance lights are securely mounted, they're clean, they're not missing or broken, their correct color is amber, and they're running and reflective. The windshield is securely mounted, it's clean, and it's not missing or broken. On there, and some instructors, everybody has their own style. It talks about the windshield wipers and no cracks or obstructions and stickers and stuff. When I'm standing this far away from the windshield, I cannot tell whether there's really any obstructions to my vision. So I'll do those things when I'm in the driver's seat, because I can actually see. Next thing down is the turn signals. The turn signals are securely mounted, they're clean, they're not missing or broken, their correct color is amber, and they're running, reflective, turn, and hazard. The next thing is the headlights. The headlights, both high and low beams, are securely mounted, they're clean, they're not missing or broken, and they're clear. Underneath the truck, there's no loop, strip, or bumps.
Can I try and open that? I couldn't do it earlier.
Yeah, this one's a little difficult.
It is,
I get
right?
it all up on.
Yeah.
One more time.
I didn't do anything.
I didn't either. Yeah, I had to put a little pressure on it too to get it, because the way it turns a little bit, kind of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, kind of. Does.
So you're ready on the this side of the truck. You open the hood. And the very first thing you're going to do is the Vanna White, right? So, Vanna White, all the hose. What's that? Vanna White, all the hoses are securely mounted to the fittings. They have no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks. The next thing I'm going to get is the windshield wiper. The windshield wiper, both the arm and blade are securely mounted. The arm is not twisted or damaged. The blade has no cracks, and it has good tension to the windshield. The next thing I'm going to get is the exhaust system. All of this right here, all this piping, is the exhaust system. So the exhaust system from here all the way to the back of the truck is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. All the nuts, bolts, and clamps are installed and tight. It also has no leaks or rust or soot trails, which would indicate leaks. The next
Jack,
thing,
where's your exhaust system?
so this is the turbo. The turbo works off the exhaust.
Okay.
So it really starts right here.
Yeah, because I guess this is just to be considered your intake.
Yeah, this right here is the exhaust manifold. So as you can see, the turbo is attached to the exhaust manifold. So all of this is considered exhaust.
Okay.
Better clarification than what I
Runs
thought.
down and runs all the way out the back of the truck. Next thing is the alternator. The alternator is securely mounted, and this is the alternator right here. So the alternator is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. All the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. No worries. It is belt driven. The belt is securely mounted. It has no frays, cracks, or cuts, and it doesn't move more than 3/4 of an inch when I push it by hand. The next thing is the alternator wires. The alternator wires are securely mounted. They're not frayed, cracked, or cut, and they have no bare wires. The last thing the water pump. The water pump, which is right here on this truck, it's on the other side on the Freightliner, which we'll be doing later. The alternator, or water pump, is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. All the nuts, bolts, and hardware are installed and tight. It is belt driven, and it's not leaking. The water pump belts are securely mounted. They're not frayed, cracked, or cut, and they do not move more than 3/4 of an inch when pushed by hand. The last thing I'm going to get on this side of the truck is the engine and transmission. There are no signs of leaks. And then it's to the other side. One of the ones we did a few classes ago. That comes like a year and a half. Oh, really? We've done a few of them. So the next thing over here, right? Start at the top, work your way down. The coolant reservoir. Coolant reservoir is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's not leaking, and it is properly filled when I check it through the sight glass. So next thing down, air compressor. Air compressor on this truck, right here. The air compressor. So when you're looking for an air compressor, usually it's a braided line like this that goes into it, and that'll help you find the air compressor. This is the air compressor. The air compressor is securely mounted. It's not cracked, broken. All the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. It's gear driven, and it's not leaking. Engine oil dipstick is secure and is properly filled above the fill mark. Next thing, we'll do the power steering pump reservoir. Power steering pump reservoir is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it too is properly filled above the fill mark, and it's not leaking. Power steering pump hose. The hose is securely mounted to the fittings. It has no abrasions, bulges, or cuts, and it's not leaking. Power steering pump itself, which is right back there, this hose. So if you're looking for the power steering pump on any of the trucks, right, you follow the hose to it. The hose goes right to the power steering pump. The power steering pump is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. All the nuts and bolts are installed and tight, and it's not leaking. It is also gear driven. Follow the hose back out. The power steering gearbox. The power steering gearbox is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. All the nuts and bolts are installed and tight, and it's not leaking. This right here starts the steering linkage, right? So the steering linkage is the only thing that we can group together. So we're going to group all of the parts on the steering linkage together and talk about them kind of like they were always one. I separate the steering linkage from the joints. So I'll do the linkage, and then I'll do all the joints. So the pitman arm, the drag link, the upper and lower control arms. You guys seeing these parts? I'm pointing at them. The pitman arm, that's the drag link. That's the upper control arm. There's the lower control arm. The tie rod is that bar behind it that runs underneath.
That long straight bar.
Across. Yeah. The tie rod ends in steering knuckle. Right? The steering knuckle is, think of the steering knuckle as the part the wheels bolted to here that actually rotates, right? So pitman arm, drag link, upper and lower control arms, tie rod ends in steering knuckle. They're all securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. They're also not worn or loose. Steering linkage joints. All the bushings and joints are intact and undamaged. All the nuts, bolts, and cotter pins are installed and tight on the steering linkage. Now, I'm going to start with the rest of the suspension. Whenever I'm talking about something that's bolted to frame, right? So whether it's a whether it is a leaf spring, a shock absorber, anything that's bolted to the frame. The first thing I'm going to talk about when I start talking about it is the mount, right? So the leaf springs, both the front and back mounts, are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and all the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. The leaf spring bushings up underneath here and back there, there's a rubber bushing inside there. The leaf spring bushings are intact and undamaged. The leaf springs themselves are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, nor are they loose or shifted. The U-bolts are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and the nuts are installed and tight. The shock absorber, right here. Everybody see the shock absorber? Right here. So the shock absorber, both the top and bottom mounts are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and all the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. The shock absorber bushings, which are right there where the bolts go through, the shock absorber bushings are intact and undamaged. The shock absorber itself is securely mounted and not leaking. Now, the shock absorber, right here, right next to the shock absorber, is the airline brake hose, right? Everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Airline brake hose. So now I'm going to start with the brake line, and I'm going to work my way right through the tire, through the brake system, around the side of the tire and the rim, and right out to the hub. I'm going to do it the same way every time, right? So the same way every time. It's like, think about it as like the knee bone's connected to the shin bone, right? So first thing I'm going to say about the air hose, brake line air hose is securely mounted to the fittings at both ends. It has no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks. The brake chamber is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it's not leaking. The slack adjuster and push rod are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and with the brakes released, they do not move more than 1 inch when pulled by hand. The brake shoes, you know where the brake shoes are, Albert? So the brake shoes are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. They're not worn dangerously thin, nor are they contaminated with oil or grease. The brake drum is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It has no holes or welds, and it too is not contaminated with oil or grease. The tire beads, the inside and outside tire beads, are intact, undamaged, and not leaking. The tire walls, the inside and outside tire walls, have no abrasions, bulges, or cuts, and they are not leaking. The top of the tire has at least 4 32/2 inch tread. It is worn evenly all the way across, and it is not leaking. That brings me right here to the rim. The rim is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It has no holes or welds. Now the next thing in, because I'm going to work straight down towards the hub, right? Towards the center of the tire. The next thing in is the valve stem. The valve stem is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's not leaking. And the tire is properly inflated when I check it with a gauge. Next thing in is the lug nuts. The lug nuts are all installed and tight. There are no rust trails or shining threads. And the holes that the lug nuts come through are not cracked or distorted. The hub itself. The hub is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's not leaking, and it's properly filled when I check it through the sight glass. Right arm. Anybody have any questions so far? What's that? No, we don't close the hood yet. Right arm. So I'm going to take a little 5-minute break right here. You guys go around. Kind of catch the police up on what we
Brake chamber, tie rod, slack adjuster,
Show me.
brake shoes or brake linings, and then your brake drums.
All right, Nacho, I got you too.
Alright, so we left off right here at the hub, so that I'm going to start working my way right on back to the back of the trailer, right? Getting everything as I go. The very first thing right here almost hits me in the head when I turn around, so I can't forget it. The mirror, the driver's side mirror and bracket, securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and all the nuts and bolts are installed tight. Next thing is the door, the driver's side door. And I'm actually going to do this, right? I'm going to open it. door is securely mounted. It opens and closes properly. The hinges, right here, the hinges are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. The nuts and bolts are installed and tight. The driver's door reflector is intact and undamaged. The fire extinguisher is securely mounted. It is properly charged and not expired. Right? The last thing right here, the seals, the inside and outside seals on the door are intact and undamaged.
There we go.
Here,
Oh, you're good. You're good.
and 6 pair of feet. Right here is the best place to go in to pump it up the fuel tank, right? Try not to get grease all up on you when you don't lean against that chair. A bunch of grease right here. You spread this grease right here, didn't you? When you were all grease monkeying yesterday?
No, I didn't touch that.
You sure?
Promise.
You had grease like all the way up your arm.
Trust me, it wasn't that. It was from the front.
Okay. So the fuel tank. Fuel tank is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. The fuel tank and the line are not leaking. The fuel cap is securely mounted, and the rubber seal on the inside of the cap is intact and undamaged. The DOT tape at the very top, right? So now that I finished the fuel tank, I'm going to start at the top of the cab, work my way down, go right through here, and I'm going to start at the top of this, top of the trailer, and work my way down and back. The DOT tape at the very top. The DOT tape at the very top is the first 3 of a light. So it's securely mounted, it's clean, and not missing. Next thing is the air hoses. The air hoses are securely mounted from the back of the tractor to the front of the trailer. They have no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks, and they're up high enough that they do not drag on the catwalk. The glad hands themselves are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and the rubber seals inside the glad hands are intact and undamaged. The electrical line is securely mounted from the back of the tractor to the front of the trailer. It has no frays, cracks, or cuts, and it has no bare wires. It is firmly seated at both ends, and the locks are engaged. Right? The catwalk is securely mounted, and it has no debris. The drive shaft, which is right inside here. Everybody take a look inside there. You see the drive shaft with the universal joint on the end of it.
Looks like I don't want to be in.
See it?
Did you see it?
So the drive shaft is securely mounted, and it's not cracked, bent, or broken. The universal joint at the end of the drive shaft, that's part that twists right. The universal joint is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it has no debris in it. The cross members from the very front of the truck, from the very front of the tractor, all the way to the back of the tractor, the cross members are all securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. They don't have any holes or welds in them, and all the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. The frame rails, both frame rails from the front of the tractor all the way to the back, are not cracked, bent, or broken, and they have no holes or welds in them.
So he's talking about this whole piece right here. That's the frame rail.
Next thing is up here, the clearance lights, right? So on this trailer, on a lot of trailers, there'll actually be a clearance light on the front and a clearance light on the side. On these trailers, the way this one's made, the clearance light is right here at like a 45-degree angle, right? So that what it's doing is it's functioning as 2 clearance lights in one. So we're going to talk about it on the front and on the side, because it's doing both jobs, right? So up there in the front, the clearance light is securely mounted. It's clean. It's not missing or broken. Its correct color is amber, and it's running and reflective. The bulkhead, which is the front of the trailer. The bulkhead is intact and undamaged, and it will contain the cargo. The skid plate. Skid plate, there's a couple different names for it. Skid plate, the upper fifth wheel, whichever one you want to call it. Skid, or the apron of the upper fifth wheel is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. The next thing, come right here. Bend down right here, you can see the parts I'm talking about. So the skid plate, right, or the apron of the trailer, is this thick metal, comes all the way back to here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the top part of the fifth wheel. So that's what I was just talking about. It sets on the skid plate of the fifth wheel, which is this top part of the fifth wheel here. This is the fifth wheel ramp, right? So the fifth wheel is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. There's no gap between the upper and lower fifth wheel, and they are properly greased. Also, the fifth wheel handle release is secured in the lock position, and the safety latch is engaged. The fifth wheel slider, which is this part right here, part with all the holes in it, right? The fifth wheel slider is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and all the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. Also, the pins are engaged. Right? The bottom part right here, this angle piece, that is the fifth wheel base. The fifth wheel base is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and all the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. Right there, you see that cylinder looking thing right in front of the fifth wheel? That's the fifth wheel air ram. So the fifth wheel air ram and lines are securely mounted.
Sorry about that. You're fine.
The fifth wheel air ram is not cracked, bent, or broken, and it's not leaking. The fifth wheel air ram lines are securely mounted to the fittings. They have no abrasions, bulges, cuts, and they too are not leaking. The last thing I'm going to say about the fifth wheel is that the locking jaw is all the way across the undamaged and all the way across the. You guys know what the locking jaw is? Oh yeah.
Cross member, frame rail, drive shaft. Want to come check it out? Because some people didn't understand it yesterday.
So you see that up there in the dark area up there?
Yeah.
You see that flat bar that goes all the way across?
Yep.
And then in front of that you can see a pin that comes down.
Mm-hmm.
That's the king pin. So the locking jaw has to be undamaged and all the way across in front of the king pin. All right?
Awesome.
Do me a favor, Dad.
Of course. Anything for Alex. What you need, Alex?
Can you just lift hard on the wheel? I think I missed a couple things.
You missed a couple things.
You just lift lines.
They're not listed there? Yeah, I did.
Well, right, you did, but it wasn't.
That was another thing we need to. Catwalk, drive shaft frames, cross members, bulkhead. Mind the way? Sorry.
Just a little bit.
Go ahead. You make yourself known. Just kind of come behind me and creeped on me.
I didn't want to interrupt you, man.
Sorry, go ahead.
You were learning. You seemed like you were.
Oh, I was just going to note something. Go ahead.
Note it.
No, go ahead. I got a second after this. Go ahead.
I have your attention. I can see you.
Of course. Yes, sir.
Thank you
You
very,
shouldn't be
very much.
afraid of anything unless he puts his hand on your back.
Well, I want to make sure that they, you know, yeah.
If he's worried
Trust
about
me.
it, if he doesn't touch it, don't worry about it.
If he wants to get weird, I'll get weird.
And I don't want you to freak out when you're testing and I'm standing over you like this with a grade sheet and I'm over your back.
I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about him touching me.
Yeah. You should be. You know what they say.
Oh God. Here we go.
Go dancing there for the back.
Alright. So, now I've done the fifth wheel, the locking jaws. Now I'm going to start here on this axle, right? With all the suspension. It's very similar to what we did on the front. It's very similar to what we did on the front, right? So, release springs, we can call them on some trucks, they're called a C-spring. On some trucks, they're called D-springs.
You're right about the U-joint.
Right.
Same
As long as
thing.
you're
Oh,
talking
no,
about,
no, they're different. I'll show you.
as long as you're talking about the spring, we know what you're talking about. As long as we're talking about the spring, we know what you're talking about.
So look at me, I didn't even say
Oh,
nothing.
he's looking at me, but it's alright.
So, I'm just letting everybody finish their side conversations, man. So, I'm like Jesus. I want your
Alright, 'cause
undivided
she's gonna get it
attention.
different come Monday anyway.
What's that?
She's gonna get it different come Monday anyway.
Doesn't matter.
He's gonna get it different come Monday anyway.
Doesn't matter.
This is your main mistake.
Hey Jack, you said this was the ramp, right? This the one that comes up this way, and then this is the skid plate.
Yep.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Oops, sorry. Let me see that.
The back here, you guys can see that here, but look, you'll see the leaf spring, right? You're gonna see shock absorber. You're gonna see new bolts. Everything basically just like we did up front.
Change the battery on this thing. You want to come check it out?
I did.
In between?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I was all in his face because I was.
So, again, when I talk about a leaf spring or anything that's bolted to the frame,
Make sure they get in.
so the leaf spring mounts. The leaf spring mounts are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. All the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. The leaf spring bushings are intact and undamaged. The leaf spring itself is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, nor is it loose or shifted. The U-bolts are halfway back on the leaf spring. So I'll just go right back down the leaf spring and look at the U-bolts. The U-bolts are all intact and undamaged, and the nuts are installed and tight on the U-bolts. The shock absorber, right under there, shock absorber has a top and bottom mount, so I'm going to talk about them first. The shock absorber mounts, both the top and bottom, are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and all the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. The shock absorber itself is intact and undamaged. And the shock absorber bushings, wait, I screwed that one up. All right. The shock absorber bushings, top and bottom, are intact and undamaged. The shock absorber itself is securely mounted and not leaking. The last thing I'll get back here on the suspension is right here. That big rubber airbag, right? So that is the airbag. It's just like a shock absorber or a leaf spring. It has mounts on the top and bottom. So the airbag mount, both top and bottom, securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. All the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. The airbag itself has no abrasions, both securely mounted, has no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks. Once I've done the suspension, then I'll start with the brake hose. The brake hose, just like we did up front, the brake hose right through the knee bone connected to the shin bone, right through the chamber, the slack adjusters, right on out the wheel. It's the only thing about this tire, this set of tires, we have 2 tires here instead of 1. We have 2 rims, 4 sidewalls, 4 beads, all that. So we want to make it very clear that we're talking about both tires when we get to those. So I'm pointing back here, and I'm going to point back here, and I'm going to say the brake line air hose is securely mounted to the fittings. It has no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks. The brake chamber is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it's not leaking. The slack adjuster and push rod are both securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and they do not move more than 1 inch when pulled by hand with the brakes released. Brake shoes are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. They're not worn dangerously thin, nor are they contaminated with oil or grease. The brake drum is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It has no holes or welds, and it too is not contaminated with oil or grease. The tire beads, both, and this is where I'm going to be very clear. I'm talking about both tires, right? The tire beads, the inside and outside tire, all 4 of them are securely mounted, undamaged, and not leaking. The tire walls, all 4 of them, on the inside and outside tires, have no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks.
Remedial.
The top of the tire,
I need it.
Remedial.
the top of the tire on this tire is 2 32 inch tread, right? Because it's not a steer tire. So the top of the tires, both the inside and outside tires, have at least 2 32 inch tread. They're not leaking, and they're worn evenly all the way across.
No, GUB, that's
Down here, at the valve stems, right? So on this wheel, it's a dual wheel. So again, I want to be very clear that I'm talking about both valve stems. The valve stems for both the inside and outside tires are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. They're not leaking. And both the inside and outside tire are properly inflated when I check them with a gauge. The lug nuts are all installed and tight. There's no rust trails or shiny threads. Also, the holes that come through the rims are not cracked or distorted. The hub, the center hub here, is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it's not leaking. Notice on this one, I did not say anything about properly filled. This does not have a sight glass. The front hub and sometimes the trailer hubs have sight glasses or plugs that you can pull out and check them yourself. This is checked by a mechanic, so I'm not going to talk about the fill of this one. When I'm done with that axle, I'm going to point to this axle, and I'm going to say I'm going to inspect this axle exactly the same way I inspected that axle. Now standing here, I'm going to work my way back a little bit. Get the mud flap, right? The mud flap is securely mounted. It's undamaged.
Usually out
The
here,
DOT tape is intact and undamaged.
They come up with the steering wheel.
These 2 lights under here, there's 2 tail lights under there. They're the only 2 lights on the
Been
entire
there for
truck.
all long. I've seen it twice.
Yeah.
They're the only 2 lights on the entire truck that have all 5 functions.
My
So I'm going to
harassment
say
of a
those 2
special kind.
lights are securely mounted, they're clean, they're not missing or broken, their correct color is red, and they have all 5 functions: run, reflective, turn, hazard, and stop. Since I'm standing right here by the landing gear, I'm going to get the landing gear. The landing gear is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. There's no missing parts. All the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. The landing gear feet are in the fully raised position, and the handle is properly stored in the cradle. Also, right here, there's enough distance that the back of the tractor will not hit the landing gear in turns. Now, right here, I'm going to get the whole side of this trailer pretty much. So, I'm going to start at the top again with the lights. The clearance lights down the whole side of the trailer are all securely mounted. They're clean, they're not missing or broken. Their proper color is amber, and they're running and reflective. The whole side of the trailer, from the nose all the way to the back of the trailer, is intact and undamaged and will contain the cargo. The DOT tape from the nose all the way to the back of the trailer is intact and undamaged. The frame and cross members, are all securely mounted. They're not cracked or broken or bent. None of the cross members, frame parts are missing. There's no holes in the floor or missing boards, and the floor will contain the cargo. right here. The mid-deck turn signal light,
Mid-deck, okay.
securely mounted. It's clean, it's not missing or broken. Its correct color is amber, and it's running reflective turn and hazard. Now I'm going to do this axle. And some of your trailers are a little different. You all can kind of get under here so you can look and see the parts. Back here, this trailer actually has no shocks, so I don't have to talk about shocks, but I got to get everything else. So this trailer has leaf springs and before and after front and back mounts. So I'm going to talk about the leaf springs mounts. The leaf spring mounts are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. All the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. The bushings on the leaf springs are intact and undamaged. The leaf springs themselves are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, nor are they loose or shifted. The torque arms, right here. This is the torque arm. The torque arm is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's not loose or worn, and it's tight. Next thing, I'm going to do the air brakes again, starting with the air hose. So the air hose is securely mounted to the fittings. It has no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks. The brake chamber, right there, is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken, and it's not leaking. The slack adjuster and push rod are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and with the brakes released, they do not move more than 1 inch. The brake shoes on the inside here, the brake shoes are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. They're not worn dangerously thin, and they're not contaminated with oil or grease. The brake drum is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It has no holes or welds, and it too is not contaminated with oil or grease. And now I'll go back outside. Now I'm going to get this set of doubles, right? Tires, like the exact same thing we did on that front axle up there. The tire beads on the inside and outside tire, all 4 of them are securely mounted and they're not leaking. The tire walls on the inside and outside tire, all 4 of them have no abrasions, bulges, cuts, or leaks. The top of the tire back here has at least 2 32 inch tread. It's not leaking and it's worn evenly all the way across. The tire rims, the inside and outside rims, are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken, and they have no holes or welds. The valve stems, both the inside and outside valve stems, securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or broken. They're not leaking, and both the inside and outside tire are properly inflated when I check it with a gauge. The lug nuts are all installed and tight. There are no rust trails or shiny threads, and the holes that they come through are not cracked and distorted. The hub is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or broken. It's not leaking, and it's properly filled when I check it through the sight glass. This one has the sight glass right here. Now,
Still going.
touch this axle, and I will say this axle I would inspect the exact same way as I inspected that one. Get the mud flap right here. The mud flap is securely mounted, it's undamaged, and the DOT tape is intact and undamaged. Last thing I'm going to get right here is this marker light. The marker light right here, it's securely mounted, it's clean, it's not missing or broken, its proper color is red, and it's running and reflective. Next thing I'm going to get is the back of the trailer. Back of the trailer, doors, first thing I'm going to talk about. The doors are securely mounted, they open and close properly, and will contain the cargo. All the hinges are securely mounted, they're not cracked, they're broken, and all the nuts and bolts are installed and tight. Also, the latches latch and lock properly back here. Then I'm going to do the lights. I'm going to start with the marker lights in the middle. The marker lights are securely mounted, they're not clean, they're not missing or broken, their correct color is red, and they're running and reflective. Then I'm going to do the tail lights. I'm going to separate the end on the function of the tail lights. So the tail lights, those 4 lights there, are all securely mounted. They're clean. They're not missing or broken. Their correct color is red. Now this is where I separate them. The outside lights, their functions are running, reflective, turn, and hazard. The inside lights, their functions are running, reflective, and stop. When I get to this side of the trailer, I'm almost done with my pre-trip outside. To this side of the trailer, I'm going to point down this side of the trailer, and I'm going to say I would inspect this side of the trailer the same way I inspected the other side, unless there's anything unique to this side of this trailer. On this trailer, there is one unique thing, so I get it. It's right up there, danger turn signal light. The danger turn signal light is securely mounted, it's clean, it's not missing or broken, its correct color is amber, and its functions are run, reflective, turn, and hazard. The last thing I'm going to do on this side of the trailer is I'm going to turn to the tester and I'm going to say, okay, I would like your assistance with checking the function of all the lights. And then I'm going to name all the lights from the front to the back.